Greetings, Earthlings! Welcome back to 7th Street. Have you ever watched Wes Craven's Last House on the Left and thought, gee, I like this movie, but I could do without the moral lessons and political undertones? Have you ever watched Last House on the Left and thought, this movie isn't sleazy enough for me? Well, good news is, I've got the movie just for you.
Have it your way. I know you'll come up with something. I trust you. You can always say 2 cold-blooded killers forced you to do it. 2 sex maniacs.
In 1972, master of horror Wes Craven broke onto the scene with his groundbreaking, jaw-dropping grindhouse film, Last House on the Left.
To avoid fainting, keep repeating to yourself, it's only a movie.
Last House on the Left is an incredible film about a pair of girls who get kidnapped one night by a group of psychotic thugs while out on the town.
I want to be your friend.
Oh, you want to get free.
I want to be your friend.
When the parents of one of the girls realizes that the 2 young teens never made it home that night, they call the police. Meanwhile, just down the road, the murderous gang led by the tyrannical Krug, played by David Hess, forces the girls into the woods where they torture, humiliate, rape, and eventually kill the young girls. After disposing of the young teens, the gang unknowingly arrives at Mary's home, where her worried parents take in the lost strangers as an act of charity. When the parents discover the travelers' bloody clothes and a necklace that was given to their daughter as a birthday present, the parents take their bloody revenge. Last House on the Left is a powerful film about the forceful taking of innocence, revenge, and an unblinking study of violence. This is one of my favorite movies of all time. The first time I ever saw Last House on the Left, it really distressed me. It really, made me feel worried and kinda panicky. And I love that. I love when a movie can make you feel. So after the success of Last House on the Left, the rape revenge subgenre became really popular in horror circles, especially among the European crowd. Now, yes, of course, there were other rape revenge films long before Last House on the Left. Wes Craven basically ripped off the Ingmar Bergman film Virgin Spring. But Last House really did start the sleazy exploitation boom of rape revenge movies in the 1970s.
What did you say?
You heard me, twat.
The movie that I want to talk about today is sort of the ultimate Last House on the Left ripoff. It doubles down on the misogyny and drops all moral lessons that Last House is trying to teach us. Now, you might be asking yourself, how exactly would one make a more sleazy, more upsetting, more controversial version of Last House on the Left? Well, for starters, you'd hire the director of Cannibal Holocaust. Ruggero Deodatt's House on the Edge of the Park is a 1980 grindhouse exploitation flick that begins like most sleazy grindhouse exploitation flicks, with some of the most beautiful music I've ever heard. The soundtrack for this movie was done by the legendary Ritz Ortolante, an Italian composer who had collaborated with Deodato before on Cannibal Holocaust, another soundtrack that is hauntingly beautiful. Ortolante was a master composer who was nominated for an Oscar, for Christ's sake. One of his calling cards in his horror soundtracks was to compose very beautiful music which would play over horrific scenes. And right on cue, this movie opens with David Hess playing Alex, stalking a woman in a car and then forcing her off the road where he rapes and strangles her to death. It's all set to Ritz Ortolante's love ballad here, and it's a really haunting scene.
Come on. We'll make it right now. You relax, and I'll relax.
Leave me, Mother! Oh, no! Ah!
Sometime later, Alex and his friend Ricky, played by the always great Giovanni Lombardo Radice, are shutting down this car service garage that they work at when a rich couple pulls in looking for some help with their car, which seems to be having troubles.
You don't know too much about cars, do you?
No, I don't.
Alex and Ricky help the couple and then are subsequently invited to an upper-class party where the two lovers are attending.
Where did you find them?
In a garage.
Our car broke down. I think they're absolutely superb. Just look at the way they're dressed and the way they move. What a great idea to bring them along. Tremendous. Anything to stop our boredom.
As the party progresses through the night, Alex and Ricky discover that there's sort of a dinner for schmucks thing going on here, and all the high-class partiers are taking advantage of and making fun of the two men.
I mean, they make an asshole out of you while you dance, and they get off on it. She does it, now you get me, now you don't in the shower.
This enrages Alex, who, by this point, the audience already knows is a sadistic, narcissistic psychopath, and he proceeds to take the group hostage and then rapes his way through the men's wives at knife point.
I don't want no.
Luckily, Ricky begins to have cold feet and oddly seems to fall for one of the girls that they've been raping, so he and the hostages manage to find a way to stop Alex before he kills them all.
Get together. Two hoodlums break into my house and terrorize the guests. I find a gun in a drawer and I kill you in self-defense. How you like that, faggot?
Ruggero Deodatt is no stranger to controversy. But this movie, man, this movie's a rough one. First and foremost, the way that this movie handles the rape revenge aspect is somewhat baffling. Movies like Last House on the Left and I Spit on Your Grave depict rape as it really is, a horribly ugly, unspeakable act. There's nothing tantalizing about it in those movies, and it really makes the revenge part work. You want to see these characters suffer. In House on the Edge of the Park, it at times comes off as kind of a rape fantasy. There are two scenes in particular where the women seem to be either enjoying it or initiating the sexual encounter a second time.
But then again, you found it exciting real high, didn't you?
While this is not necessarily uncommon in exploitation, it does undermine the presumed goal of the film, which is to make a comment on sexual violence towards women. The movie seems like it's trying to be unpleasant just for the sake of being unpleasant, which is a shame. I can't help but think that Deodatt was onto something with the idea of blurring the lines between who's good and who's bad. The rich people are depicted as assholes who manipulate and take advantage of those they perceive to be lower than them. This takes the audience on a bit of a roller coaster ride as they begin to side with the villain before they ultimately take it too far, forcing the audience to choose the lesser of two evils. Whether or not you ever feel any sympathy towards Alex, you can't deny that it is pleasing to watch him pummel the crap out of these rich pricks. The movie does make an attempt to paint him as sort of an anti-hero. Unfortunately, this falls a bit flat due to the fact that the movie literally opens with him raping and killing an innocent woman. Call me a pussy if you want, but that doesn't exactly endear me to him.
They're all fucking bastards! All of them! They did this to you! They're trying to turn us against each other!
If I had to boil it down to one thing about House on the Edge of the Park that I admire most, it's the juxtaposition of horrific subject matter with beautiful cinematography and music. It's simultaneously revolting and pleasing at the same time. It reminds me sort of morbid art. You know what I'm talking about, right? Those beautiful still images of destruction and mayhem. Beauty and ugliness, hand in hand. It's a hard thing to pull off, but Ruggero seems to do it.
Hello, police. Listen, we're being held hostage here by two babies.
Little Mrs. Muffet sat on a tub. Call the police.
No.
him a spider and sat down beside her and scared the living shit out of her.
House on the Edge of the Park is not a movie for everyone. And by this point, I'm sure you probably know whether or not it's a movie that's for you. The reasons that some admire it are also the same reasons that some hate it. It's a really grim film with a pessimistic view of human nature. Watch at your own risk, and reference this film.